What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Tide Talk, the fan-created podcast talking all things Rhode Island FC. We're back to chat about Rhode Island FC's 2-1 win at home last night against FC Tulsa. Each episode of Tide Talk is available on YouTube, and if you're watching right now, please take a second to give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. You can also find us on your favorite podcast applications like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you're listening there, we'd really appreciate it if you took a minute to leave us a 5-star rating and a short review, as it helps people find our podcast. If you're not already using the RIFC Club Collector app, make sure you click the link in the episode description and type in the code TIETALK, all one word, to get a free pack to add to your collection. My name is Ryan, and I'll be stepping in as your host today in place of Matt. Matt, we're all thinking of you, bud. And I'm joined today by everybody's favorite utility Tide Talk player, Andrew Quadros. So everybody, let's crack a beer and let's dive into this one. So Andrew, before we get into this one, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Always a good day when you're able to celebrate a good victory the night before. So it was a little bit cold, very rainy, but it was a really fun night yesterday and made for a good day today. So happy to be here to pick up my third cap on the Tide Talk podcast. But yeah, thinking of Matt and wish it was under better circumstances, but happy to be here.
Absolutely. And yeah, shout out to everybody in the comment section. Fun to see so many people in there. And yeah, it's always a fun question of, could Rhode Island FC do it on a cold, rainy night in Smithfield? And I think we found our answer there. So as we dive into this one, we will start where we always do with the lineup here. And I had to start with Rhode Island FC's version of the lineup here. This threw me for a loop trying to figure out who was playing where, because I was so thrown off by the pictures. But I think there was some interesting decisions here, mostly no Turnbull and no Chico here. So what did you think about the lineup as it came out?
Yeah, I like that because I feel like it brought in a lot of firepower in terms of getting a lot of our best players on the field. Chico obviously was kind of the big miss in terms of not having him up there, but the way he had been playing lately, I didn't mind having him come off the bench and kind of see what he can do. A little bit of foreshadowing there for the end. So I like that. I like the fact that they managed to find a way where they can still put in Heravo, Ibarra, Fusan, Holstead, Jack P, like a lot of those creative pieces they were able to put on the field there. So a little bit different, but I went into this thinking that this was a lineup that was going to produce a lot of opportunities for the rest of the team.
Yeah, and I thought there was two interesting decisions made by this. So number one was seeing Clay Holstad out at right wing back instead of Turnbull out there. Obviously not having him in that midfield too. So that was one really interesting decision. And then sticking with this kind of double attacking midfielder system instead of having two strikers like we've seen throughout the season and one attacking midfielder. So about the second game in a row, we've seen some of these changes. I personally don't. I know a bunch of us don't love seeing Clay not in the center mid, and we'll talk more about that throughout this podcast. But how did you, number one, take Clay coming in for Turnbull over at right wing back rather than having him in the midfield there?
I was trying to figure out what it meant, but was this rest for Turnbull? Was it was it a case of kind of just trying to find a way to get all those creative pieces in? Turnbull's played a lot of minutes lately.
Yep.
So it could be all of the above. So I think we've talked a lot over the course of the season about where Holstead is best positioned and where he helps the team the most. So I didn't love him at right wing back, but I do like what they were able to do in terms of getting all those creative pieces on there. So I was okay with it. I wanted to see where it shaped up. My bigger concern was that Noah Fusan and Jack P relationship in terms of how they were going to pair up. Is it a double 10 where they're sitting behind JJ? Was it a case of them swapping, which is I think what they ended up doing is they kind of just kept swapping positions. You didn't really know where they were going to be at any point in time. So that was the part that concerned me because I didn't know how it was going to work because it really hasn't worked when they've tried it over the past few weeks. Like it doesn't feel like that's really clicked or that's been a relationship that's worked well with whoever their other striker partner was, whether it was JJ or Chico or Doyle.
No, absolutely. And yeah, so I think obviously the other one too, and you kind of just mentioned to it, was Chico being dropped from the lineup here. So any concerns there leading there?
No, sorry, I got a little bit ahead there. But yeah, I think no. I mean, we're still trying to find the right combination up top.
I agree.
between Doyle, JJ, and Chico, none of them have really lit it up. They all bring different things to the table, but neither one of them, and none of them are really finished in the way that we want them to. And Chico, I think, has struggled a bit lately to really leave his mark on the game. So I didn't mind having JJ with his hold up play with two quick creative players around him with Jack P and Noah to see what would happen, and then having the ability to bring Chico in off the bench later in the game. I was cool with it. Unfortunately, he hasn't reached a phase yet in terms of his performance where you're really upset if he's not starting, which I think is something in terms of what our expectations were for him and what he's done thus far. But overall, I was okay with it. We have a lot of options. They can't all play, so someone has to sit, and I wasn't too upset that it was Chico.
That's fair enough. And I think Matt brought this up last episode, but yeah, it's been tough with the Jack P re-inclusion because I think part of his loan deal is that he kind of has to play. But it seemed as though it hasn't been working so far. And we'll talk more about this again, like I mentioned, with the midfield going forward. But we have seen kind of really trying to figure out ways to include Jack within while also mixing in what we saw working over the summer. So yeah, more to come here. But as this game started, really back and forth, there was not a lot of flow. Maybe I don't know if the weather had something to do with it. And huge before we even get started, huge shout out to everybody who made it to the match last night. It looked absolutely miserable. I was at another sporting event standing outside in the same thing, so I felt your pain. But yeah, always massive props to the Defiance anyway, and massive props to everybody who went there. But unfortunately, in the 8th minute, we did see Tulsa kind of get the better of us here, which we'll play that goal now.
Leaving MLS Next Pro and coming to USL Championship and his purpose for that. He said he felt that the MLS Next Pro was still a little bit youthful in its approach, and he wanted to compete and challenge himself against men at a higher standard. So interesting to hear his aspirations.
Here's Aaron B-Boot. B-Boot clips this ball over the top. What a fantastic finish that is.
Yeah, so Andrew, we get to play my favorite game. Whose fault was it? So I have 4 candidates for you. Jack P, Koke, the defense, or just the strike itself being amazing?
I thought you were going to say the 4 being the 2 defenders, because I think that they have some blame in that too. So that's a tough one. I think to start off,
the 5th option is all the above, to be clear.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the option, to be frank. So the Jack P loss of possession was bad. It was a heavy touch. And honestly, I think he gave up on the play too. It's like he gave up on the ball, stopped running, realizing that he was in trouble, and then tried to get on his horse and get the ball, but it was too late at that point. And then it just seemed like the players around, even the attacking player, were all late to recognize what was happening. So I went back and kind of watched this a few times over, and you see Yao and Nadarse both kind of in no man's land, particularly Yao, because they were really late to recognize that there was going to be a break there. So I think Yao kind of stepped instead of going back with his defender. And then Frank was way too late to try to catch up to his defender. And then credit to the Tulsa player, he put in a magnificent through ball that just missed Yao right onto the foot of the defender. I think Koke, because he was playing up, kind of backtrack a little bit, but he still had to cut off the angle, so he couldn't fully retreat back. And then it was a beautiful strike into the upper 90. So I don't know that I have any. I think I'm most mad at Jack out of the whole group. But I think all of the factors that you mentioned went into this, and you got to give credit to just a brilliant through ball, a brilliant strike. You can't do much there.
I couldn't agree more. I think my answer is I actually think the through ball and the strike were just executed so perfectly. I know Koke's come into a bit of criticism, and I'm seeing it in the chat right now. I don't think that was his fault in the slightest. That was an inch perfect shot. Like, even if he was on his line, I don't know that he saves that. It literally is coming from 20 yards out and actually hits the top of the net, which I don't even know how scientifically that's possible. So absolutely incredible strike by the striker there from Tulsa. I did also really get frustrated watching that back with kind of how Jack P, number one, it was a huge touch. And then to see, I think our midfield and our defense both just kind of freeze and no one reacted to that is as if they just expected the ball to go up the pitch. Then we get into our settled kind of high press defense there, high line defense. So I think it was just a really awkward play that was executed to perfection by Tulsa.
Yeah, I agree. That everyone just froze on that, and I think the only way Koke could have saved that if he was literally standing on his line.
Yep.
Which A, that's not how he plays, and B, that's not where a goalie should be when you have a player that's about to engage in a breakaway. Like, you need to be able to cut off that angle. So he was never going to save that. Lee was never going to save that. No one was saving that. It was just a great strike.
100%. So one thing that this goal made me start thinking about a bit, and earlier today I did like a thread on Twitter about things I was thinking about in this match. So Looking at our past 8 matches, and that's that Indy match on. And last week, if you watch or listen, we did some slides about kind of these phases of the season. So that Indy match is really where I think I deemed it like the rough seas or something like that. But it's where we've gone on this really kind of tough run. So in the past 8 matches, we've only scored first in 2 of them. So that's 25%. During the run of form over the summer, where we were really, really hot, collecting a ton of points. We scored first in 5 out of the 8 matches. So that was 63% of them. So this is something that's becoming a bit of an issue with this team of allowing the opponent to come on top. And I think we haven't seen us do a great job battling back, which we had 2 really big examples of this in both the Pittsburgh and the Orange County game, the past 2.
Right. They've showed a lot of resolve in many of these games, but the problem is that they're showing a lot of resolve because they're putting themselves in poor positions with the way that they've started all of these matches, whether it's home or on the road. They just seem to be slow out of the gate. And even when they're doing okay offensively in terms of their attacking movements, everything just doesn't seem to have the level of intensity that it needs to actually put the ball in. And then they find themselves falling behind in many of these games. It just keeps happening. And it's happened, I think, throughout most of the season. I remember saying at one point early in the season, commenting here when you and Matt were talking, that they had a stretch of like 4 or 5 home games in a row where they conceded first. Like it just continues to happen. So you like to see hopefully them carry some of the momentum from this game into the next ones, but it's been a recurring issue for the team.
Absolutely. So while I would love to talk more about the moments of the first half, there wasn't really a ton more here. So looking at the first half stats, it was super 50-50 across the board here. So it was literally 51-49 on possession. We had a couple more shots, 6 shots, but we had the same amount on target here. 0 big chances by either team, basically the same amount of accurate passes, the same amount of corners. So again, a pretty even match that I think neither team got into a great momentum. It's just that when Tulsa had one half opportunity, they capitalized magnificently on it.
Right. Yeah. It was one thing I found on the rewatch, and this has happened many times over the course of the season when I rewatch it after seeing it live. I was really down on them at halftime in terms of the first half performance. I didn't think they played very well. I think it's because you're jacked up watching the game live and you have a lot of anticipation of what the team's going to do. When I went back and watched it, they weren't bad. Like I actually thought that they had a decent first half. They weren't amazing. I don't think they deserved to be losing, but they didn't really do a lot to really put themselves forward. But it was better than I remember it being. So overall, I think it was a disappointing first half that they didn't do great. Just that intensity wasn't quite there. But it wasn't quite as bad as it looked when I was watching that live in person last night. I do want to ask you. So,
I had a question for you, but this is good. I like this.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you about the double PK shout, and especially since it was on the end that was right in front of the supporters group. I was over on the opposite side, and obviously you were watching via the telecast.
I thought you were gonna give me like an out to be like, yeah, I totally was over there. Yeah.
I was almost gonna say that's where you were sitting, then I realized you weren't there, so my bad. So there was 2. There was JJ getting pushed in the back. The ball immediately went out, and then Nadarse went in, and it looks like he got taken out from behind. And then actually it ended with a beautiful strike by Ibarra that just kind of clipped the top of the crossbar. So I want to get your take on it. Either one of them, was it a PK?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think the one you're referencing, actually, they called it back for a foul on RAFC, if I'm not mistaken.
The Nadarse one, I think
Yes.
that they said that it was Nadarse that impeded the defender. Watching it, and I watched this a few times, I still can't really tell who gets there first. I think that there's a very strong potential that it was actually Nadarse that got there first, and it was the Tulsa defender that took him out from behind.
Yep.
There was one in the second half too, where Brito, it was kind of the same thing where both players kind of collided at the same time, and in both cases they gave it to the defensive team, which is typical, I think, of most refereeing decisions. But I know that there was a big uproar from the D36 section back there. And truthfully, my opinion, I can't really tell for either one of them. And part of it is that the camera angles suck. There's like 1 or 2 angles. And both of them,
there was just like water all over the lens. It was
that
weird rewatch.
Definitely not helpful. And then because it was coming in from a corner and the play was quickly moving, you didn't really get the full play in frame, so it was really hard to tell. So I think it probably erred toward not being a penalty kick on either one of them, but I thought that second one had a chance of being called.
Yeah, I mean, I think refs a lot of times will, especially when it's like a bigger player, they'll side with the smaller player on them, which I know is like very like I don't know. I don't know the right way to phrase that, but there's just like it always seems to go that way. And I've said this in the past where I would rather them not give a PK than give it if it's close. So I don't have like a huge shout on. The only one I have a huge shout on was actually the end of the game where we'll talk more about it. But like I think Harabow was like very clearly fouled before passing it to Chico. The other ones I think were a bit more 50-50 bang bang. And again, I'd rather them not give it than give it. And while that pains me to say in this situation because it would have benefited RIFC, want to try to be consistent there.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. So my question I had for you about the first half. So again, I was looking more into like kind of when are we scoring and when are we conceding. So 17 of our 41 goals this year have been scored in the first half. Only one goal in our last 8 in the first half. 15 of our 37 goals against this season have been in the first half. 5 of those 15 have been in our last 8 matches. So do you think there's something happening here? Is it, bad tactics to start the game? Is the team not being, prepared, being ready for it? What do we think is going on, and why do we think we've kind of become a really different team in the first half here?
That's a great question. I do think that over the course of the season, the late halves, the late in each half, they've scored more and they've conceded more. So I don't know if it's potentially a case of them extending themselves more late in these matches. And we talked about earlier that they tend to fall behind in a lot of these as well, in terms of the other team dictating the pace or playing the way that they want to play. So it could be a case of them just trying to push forward a little bit more. Early in the year, a lot of that had to do with just poor defensive mistakes. You can argue that a little bit for this goal, but overall, I think that there's just been lapses. I can't point to any one in particular thing and say that is the cause. Like it just feels like all of these games have had their own unique story. I can't think of anything in particular in terms of the way they're set up, because what I found is, I take that back a little bit. I've read a lot in terms of they seem to come to a game with a certain set of tactics that seem to go well for a certain amount of time, and then once the other team adjusts, like what happened in the Pittsburgh game, it does feel like they struggle to adjust to that. So I think that's the reason that I would give, is the adjustments that come out of the opposing coaches' tactics midway through the first half, based on whatever RFC came into the game with. It does feel like they're slow to adapt to that, if they adapt at all. So I think that's my answer.
Yeah, and I know I've gotten on the team a bit about this in the past, where one thing I get frustrated about is, while you want Kano to put them out there with a game plan and with the mentality and everything to win, the players have to solve problems on the pitch themselves. Kano can yell and shout all he wants, but they have to be able to, be equipped and be ready to solve different problems that the team is giving them. So personally, I put this a bit more on the players for, not being able to go out there and impose their style and figure out how to play their style. I also just think a lot of those first half goals that we've talked about have just been really sloppy mistakes. And part of me thinks, I don't know that it's not that they're not up for it, but I just wonder if there's a bit of lax there, especially on the defensive end, because, even though I just spoke a couple minutes ago about how I think most of the blame or Bennett or, praise for that goal that Tulsa had was more on the Tulsa side with a great through ball and a great shot. I still don't think our defenders should be getting split that easily. I don't think our team should kind of be frozen when the ball is charging through there. So I would like to see a bit more intensity in that first half, because again, it was what really brought us to a great place in terms of collecting points and winning over that nice run over the summer.
The style that they play, though, I think leads them to, they're more susceptible to those types of plays, because especially what happens is when you play in the attacking style that they have, everything spreads out, and you're trying to play this style that's either going very direct or trying to play with very quick, 1 or 2 touches. If you lose the ball, you're in a bad position there. You're really stretched out, and that exacerbates those defensive efforts. It also puts them in position to make those defensive errors to begin with. So that's part of what we're seeing there, is that you're very vulnerable when you lose the ball, which is why when Jack P loses the ball in the middle of the field going backwards, and JJ did that multiple times, every time that happens, you're in a really tough spot, because now everybody has to retreat and they're not in the defensive position that they should be, because they're moved into their attacking positions. So that it is a part of the style of the play.
Absolutely. And as Matt says here in the comments, Andrew did buy 7 chip plushies. So please find him after. He's going to be like the Tickle Me Elmo, like Hysteria back in the day. So I'm sure he'll be selling them for $800 on eBay very soon.
They probably would go for that much. I have 2 earmarked for Patrick McKenna of Pre-Match Essentials fame. So that's actually one of his, because I have one for each of my kids and they're both sleeping with him. So I can't, I couldn't have taken
That is incredibly adorable. All right, folks. So as we move into the second half here, we actually really came out pretty hot and pretty intense, which I was very excited to see. So just going to play a quick clip here of kind of that intensity right after halftime, the 48th minute.
Vote against Detroit on August 24th. Since that point, 3 losses and a draw. Rhode Island be able to sneak something out of this. Good space for Holstead. Holstead stampedes. Holstead launches. Penaranda punches all the way out. Ibarra through. Penaranda denies once more, and it's a offside flag denying this chance.
2 huge saves there.
Rhode Island put Johan Penaranda on notice. Over 60 saves now for the campaign for Penaranda. But here's an attack. Dancing, it is J.J. Williams. Wide left.
Yeah, so again, the team, those are in the 48th and the 49th minute there. So 2 really quick back-to-back possessions where we had 2 shots on one of them in a third with JJ in the box. And the team was, I think we saw a lot of that throughout the second half where we were really bringing them to them. We were cutting through their midfield with really great passing, as Kevin says here. And the team was getting chances. So very, very different in the first half where I felt like there was no rhythm, no momentum, and we just never could combine well to get chances.
Right. I spent most of the second half in the stadium last night trying to figure out what changed, because I didn't see anything really tactically that they adjusted for, that they were doing all that differently. And it was a tale of 2 halves. Like, it was just a completely different second half. On the rewatch today, I kind of had that in mind going into the second half. What did change? And nothing really stood out aside from intensity level. It just felt like they picked up their press right from the start of the second half. They were in people's faces. They had 2 guys on the ball every time, so there was nothing lackadaisical on it. They picked up their intensity. There was just a fierce tempo that suffocated Tulsa. And where Tulsa really shined in the first half is that they played very physically, especially their back line. I feel like nothing got past their back line. All those balls get knocked down. They were winning a lot of those, or they were forcing JJ to go backwards, not really doing anything with it. They were knocking down everything, trying to break. They were breaking up through balls. Rhode Island didn't really get much going past that defensive line, and part of that was the physicality that Tulsa brought. And the style that they came out with in the second half, Rhode Island, that intensity level, made it difficult for them because it felt like they were getting more gassed over the course of the second half, and they weren't able to have that intensity and the physicality that they brought in the first half. Tulsa didn't. So it almost felt like they stopped pressing, and that they were playing a little bit more scared because they were back on their heels. And that happened throughout the entire second half. Rhode Island just took it to them. So again, I don't think that Rhode Island did much differently in the second half in terms of what they were trying to do tactically. They just brought an intensity level that overwhelmed Tulsa, which is good to see, because you knew it was. But we've had so many conversations over the past several weeks, especially, of the talent is there. The offensive movements weren't that bad, and they weren't getting it done. And when you see them put in this level of effort, it shows that they can do it. And this style that they play does work. They just have to have the intensity and the energy to match it.
I totally agree. And we're going to talk about this player a lot, but I personally thought, and this is going to surprise absolutely no one who has watched or listened to a lot of Tide Talk in the past, but I thought Noah Fuson personally was absolutely incredible. I tweeted this earlier today, but that was one of my favorite individual performances I've seen for this team this season. I thought he was everywhere. I thought he personally was finding all the gaps in their defense, coming short, picking up the ball. And anytime he touched it, he was trying to play something killer, whether it was in behind, whether he was shooting himself. And I also thought while you mentioned there wasn't a huge tactical shift, I did think we were targeting the left-hand side more. And I think we saw a lot of Jojea Corzera and Noah combining to create. And that's where we do see our first goal come from in the 69th minute from Noah Fuson, which we'll watch right now.
Is on. Fuson trots in. Fuson hits the side of the net. He tried to chip one from that distance earlier. This time, a laser beam hits the right side of the net. Rhode Island finally busts the door down. What a piece here in the 69th minute.
Yeah, so this one was really interesting because in the 63rd minute, Noah actually had a very similar shot where he cut in from that angle and hit the crossbar. And I did miss out here that there was a sub right before this in the 65th minute that Turnbull and Dequa came on for Ibarra and Jack P. Clay moved into midfield, and then we went to two up top instead of the one up top and two attacking midfielders here. But yeah, Andrew, what did you think about the Noah goal there?
It felt like it was coming. I will admit, in our Tide Talk chat about 2 minutes before that, I think it was around the 60th minute, I had said it feels like this is one of those games where the ball's just not going to cross the line. Like, it just felt like they were pouring it on and they were getting close, and Fuson had a number of good chances and it wasn't going to happen. And then he hit the crossbar like 2 minutes later, and then that goal came. So I do feel like they were due for it with the amount of pressure that they were putting on, and that largely came off of the back of Fuson, who was tremendous throughout the entire game. I started listing, just going through the rewatch today, all the chances that they had in the second half, and he is involved, if not directly responsible, for almost every single one of them. He was absolutely amazing last night in terms of what he was able to do offensively, and he carried the team on their back. So he did have a lot of those, more so than I think we're used to seeing in previous games, where he's starting on the left, drifting on the right, and was aiming for that back post or that upper corner. He had 3 or 4 of them last night, and they were all dangerous. That either forced a save, hit the crossbar, went in the net, created a chance at the back post. So it was due, and I was happy that Noah was able to bury that. It was a great shot that he put on there.
Yeah, absolutely. So from there, we do see, like I said, Chico came in the game, and we saw him have 2 really quick chances in the 70th and 73rd minute. He skins his defender off a throw in, has a big touch, and the keeper collects. Noah then plays him in through goal and has a big touch. So Chico had a rough start to this one. I did like to see how involved he was. There has been games where he goes missing slightly, which you never like to see. But it was nice that he kind of came in and immediately started getting chances. And like you said, I really, it was interesting watching this back after reading the chat in the Discord last night, because I was expecting the second half to be really frustrating in terms of like we weren't creating anything, there weren't shots, weren't chances, and it felt like from again that like 48th minute, the Clay and Ibarra back-to-back shots, like we were knocking on the door and like just putting all the pressure on their end the entire side. So again, great to see Chico get involved with that right when he came on.
Yeah, right from the jump that they were pouring it on. I have a note here in the 60th minute. I remember counting 8 men in the box that were all actively participating in the attack. I mean, they really, we can have the must-win discussion later, but they really treated this as like they need to go out and get this win in front of their home crowd. And I don't know who said what to who at halftime, but they really decided to really pick things up and pour it on. So
have we considered if like Kano's giving out like Mike's special stuff in the locker room?
I think it could be, or maybe he just had a bag of chips and he was like, whoever bags the winner tonight is going to get this bag of chips. But yeah, and then for Chico, I've had an up and down relationship with him all year long.
As we all have.
I have a 74th minute here. Unbelievable through ball played by Fuson to Dequa. Decent first touch, second touch, just basically put it directly into the goalkeeper's arms. He had a great chance there to bury it and to take the lead there. And it does seem like there's been many occasions over the past several weeks where a heavy touch has doomed him, where it just feels like he's in a good position to do something, but that first touch lets him down, and then he's not even to put a shot on that. So you expect more from him there. And my friend who I was watching the game with just turned to me and he was just like, how did this guy lead the league in goals last year? Like, he doesn't seem like someone who has a nose for the goal. Obviously, we know how the game ended, so he was able to thread the needle to finish the game.
I hope he rubbed in your friend's face, which even though you're saying this on a live podcast, I hope he still did.
Yeah, but I couldn't disagree with him because there's been more of those than there have clinical finishes.
For sure. So next up, the next 2 big moments are two subs. So we have Doyle come on for JJ in the 76th minute, and then we had Brito come on for Stoneman in the 82nd. Of those 2, I think the Brito for Stoneman one was very interesting. To me, that was, as Kevin said here, and a lot of people are saying in the chat, it really showed that this was a must-win game. The team was approaching it as we are not going to lose this. We'll take off a defender to add a more attacking presence here. So I personally love to see this.
I had assumed when Brito was coming in for Stallman that either Holstead was going to move back into, or either Turnbull or Holstead was going to move back into more defensive position. Watching it on the broadcast earlier today, you actually saw, I can't remember who it was, someone in the midfield. It might have even been Brito. It was Brito. So Brito came in and he had a conversation with Haribo, and he was kind of pointing back. And I think what he decided to do there was basically take a defender off the field and really put an attacker around, but have Haribo maybe play a little bit more back in combination with Holstead, but still in this attacking mode. So they did go for it. They were stuck with they were left with two central defenders. They had Turnbull and Quezera still there on the wings, but they threw on more attacking power, which was a really good thing to see at that moment in a tie game. 1 point, wasn't enough. They knew they needed to get more. So I was happy to see that change.
Yeah, and Captain Amazon, who clearly knows ball, gets it. I think this formation change is really what did change the game. Tulsa didn't throw it. Yeah, I think the notion that another professional team is throwing the game is insane. And while they might not have played as well as they did in the first half, even though I didn't think they played well in the first half, I think we took it to them, and we had been the better team all year. We were the better team on paper, and I think showed that we were the more talented, the better put together team.
I think they were just shell shocked at that point. I mean, they didn't even know how to break out of their own ends because they were just getting swarmed on. So I'll slightly disagree in terms of that formation changing the game. I think that happened on the first sub. I think when Jack B came off for Chico, Turnbull came on for Ibarra, and then what that allowed the team to do was move Holstead into the midfield. And
I just want to give Captain Amazon some credit. I don't know which formation change he meant there, so he might be agreeing with you here, but I totally agree that and we'll talk a bit more about this after, but the swap to kind of what we've traditionally seen of the two up top, one at attacking mid was very, very helpful as well.
Right, and just having Holstead be more present in the attack and having fewer defensive responsibilities, I think that's when things started to shift around. You could make the argument it wasn't having Jack B there, which I wouldn't necessarily disagree with. I think it was more about the people having Turnbull in there on back in his natural position and having Holstead in the attack that really did it. But I think the combination of those moves really proved to be really beneficial. That was the 65th minute, and the goal was 4 minutes later. So.
Yeah, and we're going to, again, I keep foreshadowing as if I'm teasing something out, but we are definitely going to talk more about that after. So before we get to the end here, we did see Koke come up with a really clutch save here to keep it at 1-1 in the 83rd minute.
Rito gets shoved out. No foul. Segrist. Patrick Segrist launches. Penaranda pushes it away. First shot attempt since the 17th minute for FC Tulsa.
So I thought that was a wild stat. It was the only shot attempt we had given up since the 17th minute from Tulsa. But I think a more tricky save than a lot of people will give Koke credit for. It kind of went through the defender's legs a little bit out of nowhere, and he let us dive, get to it quickly and then get it out to restart play. So really big props to Koke for keeping us at 1-1 here.
Yeah, he did a great job on that one, especially considering he hadn't seen a shot in so long. And we hear it a lot, especially in European soccer. The sign of a good goalkeeper is one that hasn't had to make a save in a long time, and then he's asked to stand up and make a save when it matters most. That plays a part of it. It also helps with the style that they play. They're more engaged in the game. They're more active. The ball's at their feet, so it's not like he's able to drift away. But Tulsa had no attack at all up until really that moment in the second half. So the fact that he was able to make that stop when it mattered was huge.
Absolutely. So as you all, I'm assuming everyone who's listening or watching has watched the game, you will have seen this massive moment here. So in the 92nd minute, we do see Chico bury home a goal.
Pretty near him, so he will fly this ball in. Noah Fuson boomerangs this ball all the way back post, backpedaling to head it Doyle. Yao gets a piece. Haribo stumbles. Haribo appeals for a penalty. Dikwa instead lifts this over the top of Penaranda. Albert Dikwa does not miss from that distance. Rhode Island knocked the door off the hinges and lead 2-1.
I just want to say before we get into this, the knock the door off the hinges call was A+. Love that.
He blew it at the end though by saying 2-0. It was such a good call.
The pressure's tough on live, but yeah. So I thought this was an absolutely weird sequence, but it was coming. I mean, we had a couple additional shots. I think actually the corner comes from another Noah, like the exact same shot he's now had 3 times in this game, where the goalkeeper parries it away, but. Great corner by Noah, and then just ping pong around the box. I think that was 100% a penalty on Haribo, but he gets it out of his feet, and then Chico scores from a pretty insane angle, but a great goal nonetheless. Yeah,
they definitely were pressing really hard to get that goal at the end there, and Noah again being a factor in all of it. So he had in the 86th minute, he had a shot blocked by the defender that ultimately led to that scramble where Brito had that collision that could have turned into a penalty kick. In the 90th minute, he had a great through ball cross to Doyle that just went out of his reach. They kept pouring it on. And then that goal came from a corner that Noah took. And the reason they had the corner was because Noah took a shot from long range that the defender deflected and took out. So he was engaged in all of it. And that whole play, I think, was a really good indication of where the team was at. It was really scrappy. Being in the stands, I had no clue what happened. Like it was just a jumble of bodies. And the next thing I know, the ball's in the back of the net. And like, I didn't even know it was a goal for sure to start, because you couldn't really tell if it had gone in or not. But looking at the replay, Chico had a very, very narrow window to bury that, and he absolutely buried it. So it was a great finish from him. And then props to Haribo on the ground there, heads up play. And I want to get the chance in short order here to praise Haribo, because
we will give him some flowers because he deserves them.
Yeah, he has an amazing game. But that play, heads up, got knocked down, could have been a penalty shot. He could have threw his hands up in the air and kind of looked around. Instead, he saw Chico was right there with a chance and managed to, while on his butt, just kind of scoot the ball over with his foot. Just great job by him. So tremendous team play. I mean, they showed a lot of grit throughout the entire second half, and this game meant a lot to them. So it was great to see them finish it off.
Absolutely. And Andrew, if we were doing good, better, best, which we will get to, everyone, and thank you all for writing in and sharing your comments, this would have been my better here. The team digging deep to win. We have struggled from playing from behind. As I mentioned, we've kind of lost the, not ability, but like we haven't been scoring first, and we have been playing from behind, and it just hasn't worked. Again, I think the Orange County game was the biggest representation of this, where we looked flat in the second half on a game that we needed to chase and to get 3 points. So looking at the second half stats here, as you'll see, it was all Rhode Island FC. 63% possession to their 37. We had 18 shots to their 1. 6 of those were on target to their 1 on target. We had one big chance that we missed, but 188 passes, accurate passes to their 84. And then we had 8 corners to their 1. So it definitely was a game that, again, in a half, that Rhode Island really took to Tulsa. And I think it really begs the question, was this a must-win, Andrew?
It absolutely was a must-win, and it was indicated as such by Noah after receiving the paddle from, I think, Matt's son, right? Didn't Zach? I think Zach's the one that gave him the paddle.
Wait, but actually, Andrew, before I get your opinion on the must-win, I'm just going to go to the team. They kind of answer this one for us.
Yeah, let's do it.
The must-win game, for what we want to do. Every game that's our mentality going into every single game.
It's always a good feeling when you score. This one mean a lot for the team, so I'm glad that I helped the team to get the 3 points today, because it was a must-win. It's a must-win at home. So
I think we're all frustrated, and we all knew this was a must-win game, and so it was just how can we find a solution and get on the same page and do what we know we can do here. I think if you just look at the table and you see how tight everything is, and as a team that's striving to be great and make playoffs and have a deep run into playoffs, every game needs to be looked at as a must-win. And coming off of 2 losses in a row for the first time and not scoring any goals, I think this was a crucial moment in our season, which I think we rose to the challenge.
So this will shock nobody here, but I couldn't agree more with the way that Noah talked about that, because I think what is missing in this, is it a must win? Is it not a must win conversation? There's a lot of context behind it, because these games that we are saying this is a must win, playing against the 9th place team in the Western Conference at home, if you drop points there, you then have to look at the rest of your schedule and say, where are you going to pick up points to then make the playoffs? So to me, when I say these are must-win games, I think this game is a must-win. I think Miami, the last game of the season at home, is a must-win. And I would say the San Antonio game is next up is a must-win, because with those, you pick up those 9 points, you're putting yourself in a much more comfortable place, that you're not having to sit there and look at the results of every other team in the table, and you're really controlling your own destiny there, making sure that you're in the playoffs and even pushing for a home playoff chance, which does look like it might be fading away at this point. But I know I very much cut you off to do my cheeky joke about the team saying it was a must win. So what do you think about that, Andrew?
No, all good. I missed my cue on that one anyway. So no, it was a must win. And there's, whenever we have this conversation, and this conversation has been had a million times, particularly in Boston sports media, with the success that we've had over the past 2 decades, you always have teams that are expected to win, expected to perform. When you get into these positions of making the playoffs or getting a home berth or a first round bye or whatever it is. So that the conversation of a must win always comes up. And there's really two camps that people fall in with a must win. It's the camp that believes the literal meaning of it, like you need to win or else you get eliminated or whatever it is. And there's the camp that takes us more broadly to understand that there's a psychological influence here. There's a strength of schedule thing. There's controlling your destiny. There's many other factors other than just, is it mathematically a must win?
If you were to just called you all nerds, by the way.
Yeah.
Heads up.
I mean, if you look at Miami
it's
FC,
also very funny that me and you are over here being like, quit it with the math. Like,
knock it off, nerds. Miami FC got eliminated from playoff contention. I think it was last week. So
I thought it was the second week of the season, but continue.
Well, but that kind of speaks to it, right? So does that mean that they didn't have a must-win game until last week? Like they've been out of it forever. Their must-win happened months ago because you reach a point where whatever your goals are for that season, in the case of Miami making the playoffs, was going to go out the window because there were so many other factors that you couldn't control, and just how the form of the team and getting in the right headspace to be able to continue to operate and do what you need to do. So I don't think it cheapens it to say that this one's a must win, even if it's not mathematically a must win. I think there can be multiple must wins. I think it can be that it's a must win now and maybe not be a must win in 2 weeks, depending on how things break out for you. But when you have 2 losses in a row, coach has talked about bad teams not losing two in a row, and they've already done that. They haven't scored since August 31st. They've looked like shit on the road lately. They're running out of games. They have a tough schedule left in terms of the teams that they're competing with. They're losing tiebreakers in terms of the head-to-head with these different teams. That they needed to win this game. They could not have come away from this one with a loss or even a tie. They needed to win. If they didn't win this one, then you can't look at just think about where the team's headspace would be at going into San Antonio next week. And then we have Tampa, and then we have Charleston. Like there's a tough road ahead. This was a must-win, and you can see the fact that it was mentioned so often by the team. I don't think is an accident. I think this has been drilled into them by the coaching staff because they understand the stakes right now.
For those who are just listening, I think I might have sprained my neck nodding along with Andrew there. Folks, that's why Andrew Quadros is here. He just knows ball. The chat is just lighting up here with couldn't agree more, Andrew. The context is super important, and yeah, I think that is by far the missing piece of this. Is it literally a statistically must win versus is it a must win for a team that was struggling, for a team that needed a win to solidify their place in the playoff picture, to pick up some momentum going into these final 5 games? So yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that is, again, why you know ball. So Andrew, we have been previewing a couple of these quick conversations before we get to the people's comments here about their RIFC in 3 and their good, better, best. But so 3 quick hits I want to talk about. So this attacking trio up front. So for that kind of big run that we went on in the middle of the season, it was normally that we would see a JJ Williams and Chico forward pairing with Noah in behind. Past couple games, we've seen either Chico or JJ with Jack P and Noah in behind. What do you think about that moving forward here? Because I have some thoughts.
My opinion changed in this game. I think going into this game, I would have said that Jack P had to be a part of it. I'm no longer in a position where I think that has to be the case. Now I'm confused. I don't know. Part of me, half of me says it should be Chico and JJ. They built this team once Chico came on board. They built this structure for the two of them to be paired with one another and to feed off of each other. They've been up and down with it. It hasn't quite worked. Jack P is not the Jack P that we remember during his first loan spell here. Since he's come back, he just looks out of sorts, and you can see that the skill and talent is there with the way he moves around in the field, the way his touches are relative to the people around him. But I thought last night he was not good. I mean, he had some pretty decent service in terms of his corners and some of his free kicks. But overall, I thought that he had a ton of heavy touches, a bunch of bad passes, and I don't think he combined well with any of that attacking trio. So I'm kind of back to saying it should be Chico and JJ, but I reserve the right to change my mind because it feels like every game they try something a little bit different and it doesn't quite work. So what I want to see is what we saw in the second half last night of just the intensity. And I think if that intensity is there, they'll find a way to make it work. And with that lack of intensity, none of those pairings or trios that they put on the field have really seemed to click all that well. So I'm kind of on the fence on this one, but curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah, so I think the next game I would go back to that the trio that we saw work really well together over the summer of Chico, JJ, and Noah in behind. just to give a little bit of data behind this. So in this match, just comparing Noah and Jack, which number one isn't fair on some of these metrics because Jack did only play until the 65th minute, but Jack had 35 touches to Noah's 56. They both had 3 key passes. Jack P had 5 crosses, 0 were accurate. Noah was 4 crosses, 3 accurate. And obviously, Noah gets the goal as well as had some really, really dangerous moments and dangerous shots on goal. So I think of the two of them, Noah has really been stepping up as of late and stepped up over the summer. And I would like to see us, I guess, just to preface all of this, is I don't hate that we are trying new things. I think for a team that hasn't been playing well, we've been in a bit of an offensive rut. It makes a lot of sense that we were out there trying different things, putting Jack P in, getting him back on loan. I mean, I wrote a blog praising everything that I was so excited to have him back. So I'm definitely not a hypocrite, but just from what we've seen of Jack, and I think I said this last week as well, I don't think he's been the same player that we saw in the beginning of the season. And whether that's his form personally, the fact that he went back to New England, didn't really play a ton, but also this team might have evolved a bit without him and is now playing a little bit differently. And again, I think Noah really has stepped up in that number 10 role. So again, I wouldn't hate seeing us go back to that trio that we saw over the summer.
Yeah, it's the only pairing / trio that has any sort of track record in terms of sustained success. And you're talking about short increments here in terms of form that happened over the course of the season. But that's your best shot at this point. So I agree that they needed to try something new. They've been very, very stagnant over the past several games. Even in their wins, they've just looked stagnant. So within the context of the system that they play, they weren't gonna change the system. So how do you adapt the system and try new ideas? And I didn't mind that they attempted to do this. So I do think that Noah probably played a little bit more freely when Jack P left the match yesterday. But at the same time, those first 20 minutes in the second half, the team itself was also playing really well, even with Jack on the field. So the way I view it is I do think Noah can play a little bit more like himself and be that attacking force when he has 2 traditional strikers in front of him, even if they're playing kind of different roles, rather than Jack P, who is like constantly switching positions with or trying to find, it doesn't seem like they've had many occasions where they've occupied the same space, but you're constantly shifting around what you're trying to do and what your role is in any given moment. So having him just kind of be that set position where he's the 10, he has the 2 strikers in front of him, he interplayed really well with Kazara. I think that's where they're at their best, and I'd rather just see them try that with the traditional strikers in front.
Yeah, and I think Tyler said it really well here too. I agree here that Jack got a bit boss physically, and I do think we're seeing a bit of that in this league where when we put out a little more of an athletic lineup, I do think it benefits us. I think Noah a bit more of an athlete. You see Clay do really well in this league because of how much of an athlete he is. So yeah, I think obviously there's going to be games that it caters to Jack's style a bit more, but I did think last night it did show, and I think even last game too, he was just a bit pushed around a little too easy, a little too lightweight there. But hey, he's a 20-year-old kid, which I hate that I can say nowadays. But
yes, but this is why he's bouncing around, right? He's still relatively young. He's too good for MLS Next Pro, but he's playing against kids. He's not good enough for MLS. USL is that good middle ground, but you are playing against grown-ass men who are bigger than you and push you around. And the style that Tulsa played in the first half, where they were physical, that doesn't play well into his style. So I think this is why you're seeing a bit of struggle there. I can't figure out why he looked so good in the first loan spell relative to now. I don't know if it's
well. I mean, we were. This is gonna. I want to be clear. I don't think this lowly of how he played the first loan spell. We were like people in the desert looking for water at that point, like offensively, and he gave us little droplets of something to hold on to. So
that's totally fair. You just saw there was a clearer separation of his skill level and everyone else in the first loan spell. And it doesn't quite seem to be there quite as much. And it could be a function of what you talked about earlier, which is just that the team has matured more and they've settled into this system. And he's trying to reestablish himself as part of that system, whereas before they almost started to adapt the system around him because of the skill level that he brought when they were at a point where they just couldn't get anything going offensively.
Yeah. And yeah, I do wonder too, like, and we're going to move off this point shortly, but I do wonder if it is hard to play a trio of Noah, Jack P, and JJ, who are all 3 people who are a bit more ball dominant and who want to play more of that like 9.5 role. So not exactly like a false 9 almost. I think JJ kind of wants to play that hold up play. Noah a bit more of that like getting in between the lines, and Jack P also want to get in between the lines. So I don't know if having a more of a Chico up there might have helped them, but Yeah, I think if it was me going into next match, I would roll with, as long as everyone's healthy, JJ Noah and Chico up front. So moving into the second conversation that we have been teasing, I guess, along the way, is just like the midfield moving forward. So obviously this one we saw a duo of Ibarra and Harabao start in the center, with Clay moving at right wing back. And personally, I don't want to see this moving forward as much, but I know you have a lot of thoughts here. So over to you, Andrew.
Yeah, so for me, Haribo has to start. He's impressed me so much. He's a smooth operator on the ball. I think he is a professional in the sense that he just understands the game. I think he has a different level of understanding of where to be, his positional awareness, what the game needs at that moment in time, how to advance the ball. He's a calming presence. He almost never loses it. I think he's such a smart player. He led the game in passes. I think he was second in duels. Duels one behind Yao. Like, he is just a rock in the middle of the park that helps the defenders. He helps his wingers. He helps his attackers. Like, he just helps everybody. So to me, I can't sing the praises of Haribo enough. He really, really impressed me last night. And I think on any other night, he probably is man of the match. But just given how the game went with Cruzera having a good match and Noah obviously doing what he did, he wasn't going to win it. So I think it has to be Haribo there. I think it's safe to say you agree with that on Noah, just in terms of what he's able to bring, his creativity, his offensive abilities, given what else the team has around him. Like, I think he needs to be in there as well. And then we love Holstead, and I don't want to see Holstead in the right wing back. So I think that has to be the trio there. And I'm okay with giving up a little bit of the defensive prowess that Ibarra has, because I think Holstead is a pretty good defender. There's a reason why he's playing that right wing back spot. It's not
They're just different
on the wing. It's because he's sound defensively, and Haribo has that too. So I think the fact that they can kind of both play either in this double pivot where they're that first line beyond the defense, or be able to kind of just do this yo-yo thing that the pulley system where they can just kind of go and complement each other. I'd rather see the two of them there with no in front. Like, to me that's the best trio in the middle.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Harabao and Ibarra are more similar, and Clay is a bit different, where Harabao and Ibarra are a bit more conservative midfielders. They like Harabao last night, 95% passing accuracy. But the thing about Harabao, he gets into duels. Like, he was 7 of 11 on ground duels. I think he's just a very solid, dependable, and I'm going to repeat so many things you just said, but very solid, dependable player in the middle there, who's going to be tidy, who's going to clean it up, who's going to just kind of roam and just kind of get us the ball back. And Clay, and I've been saying this for a while, he's like the exclamation point in there. He's putting on shots on net. He's getting into crunching tackles, and he is covering just a ton of ground. And I think the two of them are just a really beautiful fit together that I really, from now on, we have to do everything we can to get the two of them in midfield together. And this is not to, I know Ibarra has done a lot. He's done a ton of like, just what's the word for it? Just non-celebrated work, like cleaning up. We call him the garbage man. He's just kind of doing the unsung hero in there. But I just think the pairing of Holstead and Harabao, if they're healthy, and this is not just me also having a H last name bias here, but I really think the two of them are just a really good stylistic pairing that it allows Harabao can sit deep. He can kind of play that conservative defensive midfielder while Clay gets forward and rip shots. So I think he unlocks Clay, and I think that could be such a massive unlock for this team moving forward.
Ibarra was really good last night. Like that, he had a very solid game, but he doesn't have the dynamism that the other players have. He doesn't have the ability to break plays and help the rest of the team in terms of their attacking movements and creating goals. So Ibarra has a place on this team. He deserves to get a lot of minutes. But at this stage, what the team needs is finding a way to build some sort of consistency in terms of creating offensive chances. I think you're going to get that a lot more with the pairing that we're talking about, as opposed to having Barra there.
Perfect. And so last one before we get to the socials and the comments here. And if you are watching live, please get your RIFC in 3 and your good, better, best, because we got to win last night. We're doing good, better, best in the chat if you haven't already shared on social. But for the last point here, we had a lot of corners in this game. So we had 11 total, 8 in the second half. I didn't think they were great, but I know we disagree on this one. So I'll let you go first.
Yeah, they had a lot of corners, and in my opinion, a lot of them weren't wasted corners. I think most of them presented some sort of challenge for the defense. There were very few that were just giveaways that we saw many times over the course of the season. So they did vary it up a little bit. They went near post, they went short post, they played short corners. I think that they're varying up how they're attempting these. And corners are, I think we think of corners as really dangerous scoring opportunities because we see goals come from them. But when you look at the statistics, especially over the course of the past several seasons, you see that the rate of goals being scored directly from corner kicks has dropped because teams have learned how to defend them pretty well. So what I saw, in my opinion, were that the corners were not bad corners. They presented challenges to the defense, like I said, and that there were opportunities that came from them. And the exclamation point to that was the goal that won the game at the end came from a corner. It wasn't a beautiful corner but they set up a play that allowed them to try to put the ball in a position where they could put the ball on net. It led to that scramble. It led to the goal. So I was okay with I was happy with the corners, I should say. And there was a mix of people that took them. I think Rosero took some, Noah took some, Ibarra took some, Jack P took some. I thought that they were good.
Yeah, my only issue is I just think we're from a team that was kind of all of a sudden seemed to find their mojo and almost score a goal a match ish on corners or set pieces. It just seems like we've fallen a bit away from. We haven't seen a set piece goal in a bit. I know that this one you might want to count it as a set piece goal, but I just think we're being a bit too cute. This whole back post to JJ and he heads it across to somebody else. Quite frankly, it's like just stick JJ, Frank, and Yao together and just aim for the three of them and let their big bodies all help each other out and someone gets ahead on it. I think we might be just overthinking it slightly. Obviously, it's easy for me to say as someone who is 5'7" and not in the box contesting all that stuff. But I personally, I think there's work to be done there because we really we have the ability and the talent to take advantage of those situations a bit more, especially again, 11 corners in this game. And we have shown a lot of talent in this area in the past.
What we've seen from them in the past is in any given match, they have one mode of whatever they want to do for corners, and they just do that over and over and over again. So at least we saw some variety, and they are trying different things. But I wouldn't mind them trying a more direct approach. I just like them not being predictable. Like they have different ways of attacking. The back post to JJ thing I found interesting. There was, just as an aside, there was a free kick that was like deep in our own or deep in or right around midfield, I should say. And there was a short kick taken just to be able to send the ball over to JJ. It's like they didn't have the angle where they were to send the ball to JJ in the back post. So they created the short corner just to allow themselves to give them the angle to set. So that's their preferred style, is just to have JJ do that knockdown thing, which we've seen work in the past. But that part of it, like they haven't had a ton of success in it lately. So that I'd be okay with them.
I just get worried in any system where it's like you need two things to go right instead of just one thing going right. That's what makes it tough for me. So
yeah. One thing I will say on the corners, though, or set pieces in general, on the defensive side, they've cleaned it up a lot. I think that they really struggled with that.
You better knock on something, my friend.
Yeah, there we go. So it does on the defensive side.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Cleaned up pretty well. On the offensive side, again, I'm okay with it. Like I do think that they're creating more.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks, Andrew, for those kind of quick hit discussions here. So moving on to our socials and comments here. So Susan in the chat for her RIFC and 3 had "I love you," which that is just a beautiful message to the team. And we all love RIFC and 3. So I'm going to start in the Defiance Discord here. So Pawtucket J had a great game, Noah, which, you know, we all know I agree there. And shout out to Pawtucket J. He got that in before we even asked for here. So Leo had for good, better, best. Good defense closed down better after the opening goal and limited the open spaces in the defensive third of the field. Better offense became more cohesive in the second half, especially when progressing the ball down the left side. Leo knows ball, man. Best, Noah did what we've needed someone to do for a couple weeks by taking charge. He kept putting in quality shots, cutting in from the left, leading to a goal and multiple dangerous chances that ratcheted up the pressure on Tulsa. Felt like they even saw what was coming with their final change to get another defender on. RIFC and 3 riding the ship. Unreal by Leo, as always. Our friend Tyler here. Good goals. Better. Fusan. Best supporter section. 3-word review. Do it again. Tyler, A+ as always. Ooh, Leo asked a question that we might that we kind of already talked about, but could Jack P be the next super sub candidate over these next few weeks? I think we both said yes to this.
I I feel that he has a big role to play on this team at some point for the rest of the season. I'd be okay with him relinquishing his starting spot in this next game at least, though.
Absolutely. So next up from Taurus, RFC in 3, much needed win. Absolutely. I'm going to read this one. This is kind of weird. Andrew Quadros writes in, good major fight and resolve after halftime to turn this thing around. Tulsa was totally outgunned in the second half. Better Fusan putting the team on his back in the second half. What a performance. Best 3 huge points in a must-win game. RIFC in 3. Stoppage, time, stunner. Andrew, do you disagree with this other Andrew who might be the same Andrew?
That guy's a dumbass. Don't listen to him.
Our friend Nate Ski writes, RIFC in 3. Stop the bleeding. Good, win, better, atmosphere, best, winning streak starts, and undefeated in the rain. Nicely done, Nate Ski. Susan writes in, which I know she just had her I love you one, but her good, better, best, good being back at Burn. I know it feels like we weren't there for a while. Better, winning, best, Noah's goal. We all know I agree there. Scott writes in, our friend from Wales, RIFC in 3, sweating buckets out. It's good, better, best. Good, defensively, mostly sound. I agree. Better, attack was unrelenting and all around so much better than what we've seen of late. And best, you cannot beat that effort they put in. So proud of every single one of them. They left everything they had on the pitch. Totally agree, Scott. Joe Perrin writes in his RFC in 3, promising scoring opportunities. His good, Chico finally scores. Better, team's second half attack. Best, Noah's offensive threat. Awesome. Cool. So moving on to the socials here, going to Twitter, we have Fluffy Cawhog Boy with must win game. We have Terminator with about damn time. Mike Moniz has home sweet home, and I laugh every single time I say this name. Dookie Main says shit turned beautiful. I could not agree more with my friend Dookie Main.
His theme. That's good.
Cracks me up. So we have a couple good, better, best on Twitter as well. So for an RFC in 3, one from the fake Staley the Bear, RFC in 3, 1 on time, good halftime adjustments, better Fusan Quizera connection, best 1 game away from a home playoff game. I do always love when I read these out and they're like things that I thought as well. It feels very validating. So thank you all for that. Our friend, the Fluffy Cawhog Boy, make sure you tune in as I have on the screen here. Tune in tomorrow night at 9 p.m. If you're listening to this later, it is Monday night, 9 p.m. Come in live on Twitter Spaces. You can come in. Anyone can share their opinion. It's a great forum, great time for other fans to interact with other fans about what's going on with the team. Especially if you disagree with stuff, like come on in, challenge us. This is a great space to talk. But his RIFC in 3, must-win game. His good second half performance, better Noah Fusan, best Chico's game winner. We have Terminator, who did say he wasn't going to do one of these, but he did one. Never existed. Any answers to this are null. Oh, never mind. Skipping. Mike Moniz, RFC in 3, home sweet home. Good. Coach Kano making all the right moves with subs. Better. Chico's finish on that goal. Exactly the kind of goal he was brought in for. That's a great point. Best, that never quit attitude RIFC brings. And my friend Dookie Man. Good. Won a must-win game. Hell yeah, Dookie Man. Better Kano subs and timing in which he made them. Best tactical flexibility to switch to the back 4 into what looked like a midfield diamond and to let our best creative players fully show what they can do. Spot on, Dookie Man. We didn't have. Do we have any on Instagram? Yes, from Cool Will 20. Good. Amos's first appearance on the subs list. Absolutely. Better rainy game. I don't know if everyone agrees with you there, Cool Will, but I love that you loved it. And best Chico's last minute goal. Absolutely. Also looking at Instagram with RIFC in 3, we got nothing there. Facebook, I did check them all tonight, folks. From Amir, good win, better after 2 losses, best long-awaited stuffed chip toy. Yeah, the people are pumped. I love it. I can't wait to see more of those out in the wild. Next up from Mark Carrera, good people in the stands on a nasty New England night supporting a hungry expansion team. Absolutely. And I said at the beginning of the episode, but shout out to everybody who made it out last night, who stayed there and who were celebrating at the end. You all absolutely deserved it. I love this. Better, not better. Albert Deke was clutch finishing, and best, I would take RIFC over the New England Revolution pound for pound at this very moment. And Charity Ward said, absolutely agree. We love that. And then the RFC post, Don Lindbergh, our friend in the RFC Nation channel, big win, lads. And Christopher Peterson, not okay today. I'll take that. All right. I think that's everywhere. We did it. Awesome, everybody.
Susan, though, that I want you to hit on.
What was that?
We have one request from Susan that I want you to hit on.
Ooh, where is it?
Comments there. It's the most recent one.
Most recent. Can we hear Dookie? Was it one of Susan? Was it one of Dookie's comments or?
I think she just likes saying the word Dookie.
It's, I mean, I can't. Awesome, everybody. Well, hey, thank you all so much for joining. It's always fun to talk about a win, and big shout out to Andrew for joining us. So, yeah, thank you everyone for joining tonight, especially those of you who joined live in the chat. In a very special, I wrote this out and now I'm saying it again, but a very special thank you for Andrew for jumping in as co-host. Remember that Tide Talk is more than just a podcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for daily social media content. Click that link in the episode description to follow all of our accounts. If you're not already there, join the RIFC Nation Facebook group. We just eclipsed 800 members, I think, a week ago, and it is a great place to see more RIFC content and interact with fellow fans. If you're not already using the RIFC Club Collector app, make sure you click the link in the episode description and type in the code Tide Talk, all one word, lowercase, to get a free pack to add to your collection. One programming note is make sure you keep an eye out. We will hopefully be announcing some more dates at Providence Brewing, and always shout out to them for supporting the show. I got a Coastline Cruiser here, the Summer Lager, which I am holding on to summer with dear life. But thanks again for tuning into Tide Talk. I have been your host, Ryan. And as always, up the tide.
Up the Tide.